So, as we mentioned earlier, hundreds of voters were turned away from voting sites in Puerto Rico when officials failed to deliver ballots to those sites. And now primary votes have been suspended in several cities across the island. So, we're going to dig into that and find out just what happened. CBS News correspondent David Begnaud is joining me now. David, part of the reason this is so concerning is, we have many people that are being disenfranchised, and these are sort of crucial votes here for the island, the primary votes this year. So, take us through the day. How did things start to unfold, and how did sort of the dominoes start to drop when it came to these primary voting sites?
It was shocking, Anne Marie. I mean, so many people have said, David, with all the issues we've had over the last 4 years or so, we've never had anything like this happen during an election. So basically, the polls are supposed to open at the regular time there, and word started seeping out that the ballots hadn't arrived. And then they went and found out that the trucks hadn't left the elections place. And then they went and found out that some of the briefcases, as they're called in Puerto Rico, had not been stuffed with the ballots to then be put in the boxes, to be put in the trucks and then delivered. And so pretty quickly, they started to see, the media started to see, and voters started to see, hey, wait a minute, my polling place didn't open. So then an announcement came out and they said, well, if your voting center hasn't opened, we're going to open at 11 a.m. And then that got pushed back in some places to 1 p.m. or 3 p.m. Last night at 10 p.m., some people were standing in line, but it was pure chaos because you had the leaders of these two parties, the PNP, which the current governor is a part of, and the PPD, which is the other pretty big party on the island. They got together yesterday and said, hey, listen, this is such a mess. We think we ought to suspend the voting that hasn't started, and we'll just do it again next Sunday. Well, the guy who runs the Elections Commission still hasn't said whether they're going to do that. Meanwhile, some lawsuits have been filed, and almost certainly the court's going to make some type of decision this week, probably.
Okay, so the tentative plan, if I can call it a tentative plan, is to have voting resume on Sunday, if I can call it a plan. Just why were there so many issues? I mean, it's not like this is the first time Puerto Rico has done this. Why is this year different?
You know, it's interesting, Anne Marie, you know as well as anybody, over the last 4 years, you've had Hurricane Maria, you had Hurricane Irma, you had the earthquakes in Puerto Rico. I mean, the island has, with such great resilience, overcome so much when it comes to natural disasters. This was a man-made disaster that was completely avoidable. And it comes down to pretty basic stuff, like apparently they were having trouble finding the company that could print enough ballots in enough time. So maybe you're thinking, oh, maybe they got a late start. The money apparently was approved back in March. The primary was supposed to be in June, Anne Marie, but it got, because of COVID, pushed to August. They had ample time. They still couldn't get it done. It is the most baffling, embarrassing thing that Puerto Ricans have ever seen happen. I mean, it literally was a devastating day for democracy on the island.
And so then what is the governor saying? How is she explaining this? And also, what about her critics? What are they saying? Do they think that she's responsible?
So that's a good question. So she was livid, and of course she is one of the people running for governor, and what makes this interesting is that the current governor was not elected. She assumed office because the last governor resigned in 2019. Well, interestingly, the last governor who resigned appointed the man who was the head of the Elections Commission, who screwed up royally. So the current governor who is running for election, Wanda Vasquez, said yesterday, hey, listen, the Elections Commission president needs to resign. So far, he has not resigned. And nobody's really taken responsibility solely. The Elections Commission president kind of panned it off on the parties and said they weren't organized enough. Bottom line is he had to oversee it. I mean, Anne-Marie, look, maybe it's not the easiest job in the world, but you got to print out some ballots, you got to put them in boxes, and you got to deliver them. There were truck drivers at the warehouse to receive the ballots 12 hours before they were supposed to roll out, and they still weren't ready. So the question is, can they get it right? Can they be ready for November? And in the meantime, what's going to happen? You have some of the candidates who say, hey, no more voting. This is it. We had our shot, even though it was completely botched, stop it. And then you have others who say, no, let the court decide. Maybe we do it all over again. Or maybe we go to Sunday and we let those who weren't able to vote come in and vote.
Oh man, it is dicey because you can't just say to someone, "Yeah, no more voting. Like, your vote doesn't count." It just
Exactly.
that's not what we do here. So just remind people, though, and you touched a little bit on this,
Yeah.
why this is a very historic vote. You talked about the fact that the current governor was actually not elected. In fact, it was sort of like no one wanted the position, and she kind of ended up there by default. But they've been
That's
dealing
right.
with almost kind of like a musical chairs of officials, people come getting in and swapping out and being accused of mismanagement and then getting, ushered out the door with someone new. So just explain why this is so important.
So you bring up a really good point, which I'm so glad you did. In Puerto Rico, they have a terminal problem. And that problem is every 4 years, the administrations usually turn over. And what they do is instead of coming in and leaving some career people who know what the heck they're doing, they wipe out the agencies. They clear the secretary. They almost clear them from top to bottom. So you have 4 years of people in charge. Then the new administration comes in of another party. And those 4 years of people go to the beach, so to speak, and new people take over. That is a major problem here because you have agencies that are being run by people who have only a year or two of experience. As it pertains to the governor, let's give some credit where it's due. She has gotten a lot of praise for the way she has handled coronavirus on the island in terms of a very strict response. She issued a complete and total lockdown of the island before any other governor here in the States did anything even remotely similar. So she came in, yes, she did not want the job. She made it very clear from the beginning she didn't want the job. She was the attorney general. In fact, the lieutenant governor should have taken over when the governor resigned, but the position was vacant. So she hopscotched all the way into the governor's office, initially said, I don't want the job, I'm not going to run, changed her mind, now she's running. And the race is pretty close from what we can tell from the results that leaked out yesterday. But does that help you understand a little bit about the agency issues? They just have this problem with all the agencies where there's not a lot of career people who have years of experience doing things. So the Elections Commission, they sort of altered the elections law. They put in a new team of people. And then you got this guy who's a judge. He came off the bench to run the Elections Commission, who seemingly screwed up so royalty. And there's a lot of people at the Elections Commission who are brand new. They have 600 employees. They have more than $40 million in budget, Anne-Marie. It's not like they didn't have the people, the money, or the materials to get it done.
Man, David, that helps a lot. That sheds a lot of light on things. You always sort of have your finger on the pulse of what's going on the island. And it's just, it's heartbreaking. I want to come to you, David Begnaud, to talk about what's happening in Puerto Rico and for it to be all positive. The island and the people, they need and deserve a break. It's time to just sort of get things right the ship, if you will. David Begnaud, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, sir.
Listen, I love you for caring, and you kind of put me on the hot seat there with the good news. The reality is there's a lot of good news, and I should tell a lot more of it, but you know as well as anyone, Anne-Marie, there's a lot of other things that are not positive, but are very important, and sadly, we have to stay on top of them. But count on us for the good stories, too. Thanks for making this a segment today. I know a lot of people appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.